Stevenson news!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Lou DeBellia took to Twitter and posted this, which reads, "You got it right, Bog. Amanda Serrano's next boxing fight will be a unifier with the WBA champion Erica Cruz Hernandez. A deal was finalized yesterday with her management. Amanda, Serrano sisters, is committed to both a full unification at 126 and continuing her progress in mixed martial arts. That's more encouraging news than what I expected, because I wasn't sure that the unification match was going to happen in the featherweight division. I wasn't sure that Erica Cruz would walk into a situation like that so soon after becoming a champion, after having unseated Canada's own Jelena Marjanovic. You have to understand something.
Things got quiet for a while.
You didn't hear much about a potential unification match with Sarah Mahfoud. You didn't hear much about a potential unification match with Erica Cruz. And with Amanda Serrano having very recently participated in an MMA fight by way of Icon Fights on UFC Fight Pass, it kind of gave you the impression that things are slowing down when it comes to Amanda's goal of unifying the featherweight division. So this is good news. Consolidation is coming to 126 pounds. And with those things in mind, this is Amanda Serrano's best weight, featherweight. As Amanda, in her own words, stated, she's a natural featherweight.
Erica's aggression might have went well with Jelena.
But I don't think she'd have that same luck with Amanda, because Jelena, unlike Amanda, Jelena was an aging champion, an aging fighter. She's pushing 40. Would have liked to have thought that was a title defense that Jelena would have made it through, but I was wrong, and Erica Cruz pried that belt away from her in one-sided fashion, I might add. Though that same aggression that allowed Erica to pry that belt away from Jelena, it won't work against Amanda.
She's a stronger puncher.
At this weight, the strongest, if not one of the strongest punchers, and one of the better boxers, that if artillery, strength of arms, is not enough to get it done, Amanda Serrano can always unpack the boxing, as she has one of the cleaner textbook styles in this division. That being said, according to Lou, the fight is done. According to Lou, the fight is finalized, and all we have to do now is wait for an official announcement.
And that is good news.
So whether or not this will actually bring Amanda closer to a Katie Taylor fight and an improved purse, since she took issue with what was on the table for her the last time out, that's another question entirely. Really don't know. Katie Taylor's got so many options these days. Amanda is just one of them, and there's no guarantees that unifying this division and becoming its undisputed champion, there's no guarantees that gets it at Katie Taylor fight.
Maybe it happens.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe that ship has sailed, as there are that many other girls that don't come with all of the demands that an Amanda Serrano may have had. I don't know. Perhaps the sun has set on that fight. Perhaps it hasn't. Either way, that's not a fight I expect to see in the near future. This is what's in front of Amanda, Erica Cruz. So let's wait for an official announcement. MTK Global Boxing, by way of their Twitter account, tweeted, "Natasha Jonas has fired out a warning to any of the world champions from super featherweight to super lightweight, 140 pounds, ahead of her return at Fight Camp." That's right. We know by now that Natasha Jonas is set to make an appearance on what is the second season of Fight Camp. I heard a couple of weight divisions being thrown around. Nothing is confirmed. I think I heard something about a lightweight contest. What could be a gimme fight for Natasha Jonas, since she's rebounding off that loss to Katie Taylor. I take no issue with that. I take no issue with a rebound fight for Natasha. And Natasha now is officially a matchroom fighter. Thus, she has the matchroom promotional engine working for her. And it's possible that Natasha Jonas participates in what's supposed to be the third season of the World Boxing Super Series. We talked about that in my previous video. It's possible that she makes an appearance in the third season, but it's also possible that Matchroom has her do something else, somewhere else, above 130 pounds, maybe at 140. Natasha Jonas has generous enough physical dimensions that I think she could not only campaign at 140 pounds, but be very formidable there, very solid, and she packs a devastating punch that I think would carry into the super lightweight division. I could see her fighting Christina Lenarda too, who, like Natasha, would be a fighter that moved up to that division. I could see her fighting Mary McGee or Kaylee Reese. I could see any one of those matchups happening, because I've been telling you guys,
at 140,
Eddie Hearn is going to have to work with the Empire stable of fighters. He's got no choice. Chantel Cameron, who's already a champion at 140 pounds, she wants to become the undisputed champion of that division. That puts Eddie in a situation to where he's got to work with Brian, he's got to work with Kaylee, Mary, and Christina. And he might have to also work with Brian in reference to Natasha, because I could see Natasha moving up there and shooting for a world title.
Now, who's she's gonna fight next?
Oh, well, that's anybody's guess. I mean, I could see Eddie Hearn conjuring up Argentinia's own Victoria Bustos, former IBF lightweight champion Victoria Bustos, who was in action very recently against Maria Capriolo in what was a 6-rounder. She won a majority decision. A familiar face, a common opponent between Natasha and Katie Taylor.
And Cecilia Breakus.
I could see Natasha Jonas' rebound fight coming against Victoria Bustos. For what it's worth, I think Natasha has everything it takes to beat Victoria Bustos. Maybe they decide to put her in there with someone a little less formidable, as it is a rebound fight. It's a keep busy fight. In any event, it's possible Natasha makes an appearance in the 3rd season of the World Boxing Super Series, but it's also possible, perhaps a little more possible, that she moves up to 140 and sees about winning a title up there. In other news, young Shakur Stevenson had this to say. He said, "I'm so ready to fight again, it's crazy. I know when I can do better. Great training camp. I was in great shape. I just couldn't get off like I wanted to. He was really awkward, but best believe I'm right back in the gym, and I will perform so much better the next fight." He added, "Tim Bradley, you funny money, my guy. My last 15 fights, you've been calling me the truth, saying I should be on the pound-for-pound list when I was like 12-0, and now I have one dull night, and you're acting like I'm this super boring fighter. Now stop it." Addressing Tim Bradley's comments that he was very close to falling asleep during the fight. Shakur went on to say, "Coach Al just called me with the best but most simple coaching advice that's going to take me a long way." That is the same Coach Al Mitchell, that coaches Mikaela Mayer, the reigning WBO super featherweight champion, well-known coach. Mikaela is going to be in action this weekend on the undercard of Inui versus Das Marinas. Back to the point, Shakur wasn't done. Shakur added, he said, "You don't know how good you are, and you don't know how great you can be." He said, "I needed that Saturday. Old man speaking all facts. But Crawford is the realest. He showed real genuine love since the beginning and always kept it 100 with me. Never switched up on me or nothing." And Shakur is feeling the pinch of what was a lackluster showing in front of a lot of people because, there were people in attendance and the fight actually did good TV numbers, good TV ratings, close to 1 million, just short of it. But the fight itself was rather uneventful. Not very many punches thrown by either guy. It was what you would describe as a safety-first kind of performance from Shakur Stevenson and Nick Taylor to some degree, though we all know that...
Be honest.
The big promotional engine, Top Rank, ESPN, they're not behind Nick Taylor. They're not showcasing Nick Taylor. They are showcasing Shakur Stevenson. And Shakur Stevenson's performance, whilst effective, failed to impress and failed to entertain a lot of people.
It was a safety-first kind of fight.
I think perception has a lot to do with why young Shakur is subject to so much criticism. The constant Floyd Mayweather Jr. comparisons in the broadcast. And I'll tell you something, it's not a knock on Shakur, but I can tell you Shakur's not what Mayweather was at this point in the juncture, at this point in Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s young career. In Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s young career, he was actually more of an offensive fighter than what he became known to being later on in his career. He was a fucking animal is what he was, and that's not Shakur.
Not yet, anyways.
And not based on this past weekend's fight. That was a very safety-first kind of performance. Safety first, albeit effective, it doesn't entertain. And even though this is a sport, it's also a business. The entertainment business. I said it before, and I'll say it again. You don't want to get relegated to that who needs you committee. That committee to where you might be a high-ranked fighter, a very effective boxer, skilled, but there's no money behind you.
No fans.
That you're not generating revenue as a fighter because people aren't interested in seeing you fight. And while this past weekend's fight might have done good numbers,
it did.
Those ain't the numbers you got to worry about. The numbers you got to worry about are Shakur Stevenson's next set of numbers after that many people saw him perform in that fight. That fight that failed to impress a lot of people and failed to entertain a lot of people. Should young Shakur compromise safety for marquee value? Is that the advice that he should be given? No. I'm not a proponent of this mentality that you've got to pile on a fighter after one bad showing, after one bad fight. And I don't even think it was a bad fight because it was a dominant victory for Shakur Stevenson. It just wasn't entertaining. But I'm not a proponent of this idea that you got to pile on this guy, this young guy, based on a ho-hum win. Not a proponent of this mentality to where you got to throw the whole fighter away based on one bad showing or one
boring,
not entertaining showing, I should say. As Shakur clearly won the fight, it never got away from him, and the real issue was entertainment value, that he's just not opening up enough and throwing enough punches, enough to entertain the boxing community at large. How do you remedy this? Well, I think that Shakur Stevenson struggled with Nictalia's height and his straight punches. Nictalia wasn't necessarily best boxer, someone with a very high ceiling, but he had very generous physical dimensions as far as super featherweights go, and according to Shakur, he actually packed a wallop, he actually packed a punch. Young Shakur felt this guy's power, and he didn't like it. So in essence, what Shakur did was take a safety-first approach to boxing with this boxer. And the way that this kind of a situation can be remedied moving forward is with nothing else but experience, development. The old saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think that proverb, that cliche, I should say, that applies here. That Shakur's approach in dealing with this guy didn't seem very nuanced. He didn't pull very many tricks, if any, out of the bag. And it's perhaps because he doesn't yet have those tricks. He is a very young fighter.
So maybe what he needs is more experience.
More nuanced usage of the lead hand, multi-purposing it, throwing different variations of a jab consistently, because what it looked like was Shakur was waiting for a countering opportunity from Nictalia, who was being economic himself. In essence, Shakur's working off what Nictalia's doing, and Nictalia's not doing a lot, so neither is Shakur. And what needs to happen is Shakur needs to create opportunities because Nictalia's not giving him very many. One way to do that is to multi-purpose the lead hand and throw different variations of a jab.
You gotta open him up.
Because he doesn't want to do it for you. Those lulls in action, those quiet moments happening in a fight, those are the moments where Shakur's got to grab the bull by the horns and not necessarily compromise defense for offense, but refine his approach to create opportunities. Never mind the critics, never mind the naysayers and what they're saying, because they're saying this today and they're saying that tomorrow. Tyson Fury's a prime example of that. Sharpen your skills and the rest will fall into place. And finally, here we have two separate quotes from the same guy in reference to the same subject. The subject of Joshua versus Usyk, where Tyson Fury, the reigning WBC heavyweight champion, decided to chime in. The first quote reads, "Usyk is a southpaw, clever, technically very good. He's smaller, but he handled Derek Chisora, who is physically tougher than Joshua. So while I'm absolutely confident of beating Wilder, I'm not so sure about AJ not losing this fight." The second quote, entirely different perspective. "I don't believe Usyk's a heavyweight. I just think he's a pumped-up cruiserweight. In my opinion, Chisora beat Usyk, and Joshua is a much bigger, stronger man. I think he walks right through Usyk." You heard that right. When Tyson Fury spoke to Male Sport, he wasn't sure AJ would beat this guy. But when he spoke to Seconds Out, he's completely confident that Usyk's nothing but a pumped-up cruiserweight that Joshua's going to walk through. How do you reconcile this? Well, I don't know. Maybe this is a symptom of mental illness. I mean, Tyson Fury has long been a walking, talking contradiction. Who can really make sense of the things he says or why he says them? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that now that Joshua's fighting Usyk, and Tyson is going to be fighting Deontay Wilder, maybe he feels the need to talk down Usyk as an opponent preemptively so he doesn't have to give Anthony Joshua credit for beating him if he beats him. Maybe he's talking him down because he knows he's got a fight lined up, and so does Anthony Joshua. And in some ways, they're in competition with each other, though not directly, not in the same ring, but they are competing in a manner of speaking, and he wants his event to eclipse Anthony Joshua's event. He wants his fight to eclipse Anthony Joshua's fight. So what he starts doing, he starts talking down the guy Anthony Joshua is supposed to fight. Kind of like how Bob Arum was talking up Joseph Parker. Bob Arum was talking up Kubrat Pulev. Then after the fight, he deprived Anthony Joshua of all the credit for having won. Maybe that's what this is.
Bob gave Parker a good chance of beating AJ.
He gave Pulev a good chance of beating him too. I'm sure that Bob co-promoting both of those fighters at that time had absolutely nothing to do with his assessment. The same way I'm sure that Tyson Fury, his fight, it's got nothing to do with his assessment of Anthony Joshua's fight. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe it's that way. Maybe he was telling the truth of what he really felt in the first tweet, and in the second tweet, he was hamming it up for the cameras. He's got to talk down whoever AJ's fighting because he doesn't want to have to give him credit if he wins. Or maybe he's just a fucking lunatic that never makes any sense. I mean, these tweets are only 4 days apart. Just 4 days apart. How could the man's opinion change so dramatically in only 4 fucking days?
Guy's a fucking nut job, that's how.
Or maybe he's just a fucking hypocrite. I've never actually heard a member of the media address Tyson Fury in reference to his constant contradictions, how he can say 2 very dramatically different things, polar opposites in reference to the same subject. This ain't the first time we've seen this.
Well, I don't think anybody's losing sleep over things Tyson Fury says.
Except maybe Deontay Wilder, assuming their trilogy in its entirety isn't some scripted soap opera they've planned preemptively. Who really knows at this point? It's hard to get a read on what can only be described as 2 shysters. 2 guys that have lost the boxing community's trust for the most part because there has been divisiveness seen from the both of them. I mean, Deontay Wilder, he spent all that time dragging Anthony Joshua's name in the mud only to finally admit that he was offered more money to fight Anthony Joshua than was on the table for him to fight Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, he's been a walking, talking contradiction for years. That didn't start today.
I know, it's funny how different these comments are.
These are wildly different reactions to the exact same subject, the exact same fight. Tyson Fury's a funny guy, never a dull moment, right?
Right.
Tyson Fury, a man who is consistently inconsistent.